I was born with everything: a penthouse overlooking the city, private schools, trust funds, connections. Everything except love. My parents built an empire, but they never built a relationship with me. And when it mattered most, when I needed them the most, they made a choice. They chose the money. They chose the dynasty. But they didn't choose me. And that decision, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Let me tell you why. If you've ever felt abandoned by the people you loved, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not alone. My name is James Whitmore. I'm 28 years old, and I grew up in a world most people only dream about. My father, Charles Montgomery, built a real estate empire from nothing. By the time I was born, he owned over 300 properties across 3 states. My mother, Eleanor Harrington, came from old money, the kind of family that had their name on buildings and charity galas. Together, they created a dynasty. But here's the thing about dynasties: they don't leave room for people. They only leave room for legacy. I grew up in a 15,000-square-foot mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood of the city. Every room was perfect. Every painting was curated by the best art consultants. Every piece of furniture cost more than most people's cars. But there was never laughter in those rooms. There was never warmth. My childhood was scheduled like a business meeting. 6 a.m., private tutor. 9 a.m., tennis lessons with a champion coach. 12 p.m., lunch with father's business associates. 3 p.m., piano lessons. 6 p.m., formal dinner where I was expected to sit quietly and smile. 8 p.m., bed. I remember being 7 years old, coming home excited to show my father a drawing I made at school. I ran to his office, this massive room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. He was on a conference call. He didn't even look at me. His assistant told me to wait outside. I waited for 3 hours. By the time he finished, I was asleep in the hallway. That drawing never got shown. My parents had everything but time. They had everything but patience. They had everything but me. School was no better. I went to Blackstone Academy, the most prestigious preparatory school in the state. Every kid there had money. Every kid there was groomed to take over their family business or go to an Ivy League school. There was no room for passion. There was no room for dreams that didn't make financial sense. I was different, though. While other kids studied finance and law, I was secretly taking acting classes. I was writing scripts. I was performing in underground theater productions under a fake name, James Stone, because I knew what would happen if my family found out. I loved it. For the first time in my life, I felt alive. But I was terrified. By the time I turned 18, the pressure was overwhelming. My father expected me to study business at Harvard. My mother had already planned my coming out, literally a debutante ball that would introduce me to the right circles so I could make the right connections. I tried to tell them. I sat down with both of them in that cold, perfect dining room, and I told them the truth. I don't want to run the family business. I want to be an actor. I want to perform. I want to create art. My father looked at me like I had told him I was moving to Mars. "You're joking," he said. "I'm not," I replied. My mother actually laughed. She thought it was adorable, like a child saying they wanted to be an astronaut. "James," my father said, his voice cold as ice, "this family has spent millions building our name. Our name means something. It means power. It means respect. And you want to throw that away to play dress-up on stage." "I want to be happy," I said. He stood up. He actually stood up and walked out of the room without saying another word. That was the moment I knew. I knew that to my family, I would never be more important than the money. I would never be more important than the legacy. I would never be enough. But I didn't know how far they would go to prove it. After that dinner, everything changed. My father didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Not a single word. My mother tried to smooth things over with her typical passive-aggressive approach, leaving articles about successful businessmen on my pillow, scheduling career counseling sessions with her friends' husbands, suggesting I was going through a phase. A phase. Like wanting to pursue your dreams was something you grew out of, like acne or braces. The breaking point came 3 months later. I was 19, and I had been accepted to Juilliard, one of the best acting schools in the country. I had applied without telling anyone. I had used a scholarship from the drama department to cover most of the tuition. For the first time in my life, I had made a decision that was entirely mine. I was sitting in my room when my father summoned me to his office. When Charles Montgomery summoned you, you didn't refuse. It wasn't a request, it was a command. I walked into that cold, sterile office with the floor-to-ceiling windows. My mother was already there, sitting on one of those uncomfortable modern chairs that cost more than a car but looked like it was designed by someone who hated comfort. "James," my father began, not even looking up from his desk, "I received a phone call today from someone at Juilliard. Apparently, you've been accepted. Apparently, you've already committed to attending." My heart stopped. I hadn't told them. I had been planning to tell them, but I was waiting for the right moment. There never was a right moment. "Yes, sir," I said quietly. My mother gasped, actually gasped, like I had just announced I was joining a cult. "Have you lost your mind?" my father asked, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold. So cold. "I'm going to study acting. It's what I want to do. It's what I've always wanted to do," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My father stood up. He walked around his desk and stood directly in front of me. He was tall, 6 feet 2 inches, and he used his height as a weapon. He leaned in close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. "Let me be very clear about something," he said slowly, deliberately. "You are a Montgomery. You are a Whitmore. These names come with responsibility. These names come with expectations. And these names come with everything, and I mean everything that you could possibly want." He paused for effect. "But they do not come with choices. Not like this. Not with acting." He spat the word like it was poison. "If you go to Juilliard," my mother said, her voice shaking, "you will be turning your back on this family. You will be throwing away your inheritance. You will be throwing away your future. If you walk through those doors," my father continued, "you will do it alone, without our money, without our name, without our support." I felt my hands shaking. "So that's it. You'll disown me." "We will remove you from the will," my father said coldly. "We will cut off your trust fund. We will make sure that every door in the city is closed to you. You will have nothing, James. Nothing." My mother was crying now, not because she was sad for me, but because she was embarrassed. The Harringtons didn't have children who became actors. That simply wasn't done. "You have 2 choices," my father said. "Choice 1, you forget about this Juilliard nonsense, you attend Harvard Business School, and you begin your apprenticeship in the family company. You will have everything. Everything." He paused, letting the weight of that word sink in. "Choice 2, you throw it all away. You become nothing. And you never speak to us again." The silence in that room was deafening. I thought about my future. I thought about the money, the security, the guarantee of a comfortable life. I thought about my parents' disappointment. I thought about the shame I would bring to the family name. But then I thought about that 7-year-old boy with the drawing. The boy who was never enough. The boy who was always waiting outside a closed door. I looked my father in the eye. "I choose Juilliard," I said. My father didn't say another word. He just turned around, walked back to his desk, and pressed a button on his intercom. "Have James's things moved to the guest house?" he said, "and freeze his trust fund effective immediately." Just like that. My entire life, dismantled in 30 seconds. My mother left the room without looking at me. I stood there for a moment, waiting for someone to say something, anything that would indicate this was some kind of test, some kind of manipulation to make me change my mind. But nobody came back. Nobody said anything. I walked out of that office and I never walked back in. The next 48 hours were a blur. My father's lawyers drew up papers cutting me off from the family trust. They froze my credit cards. They removed me from the family insurance. They essentially erased me from their lives on a legal and financial level. My mother sent a letter. Not a call, not a visit, a letter delivered by their lawyer. It said, "You have made your choice. I hope it was worth everything you've lost." Mother. It wasn't even signed Eleanor. It was just Mother, like I was already a stranger to her. The guest house was a small 2-bedroom on the edge of the property, the kind of place they used for visiting staff or temporary employees. I packed a single suitcase with my belongings. I wasn't allowed to take anything else. Not the clothes they had bought me. Not the books they had given me. Not even the few photographs of my family I had kept. I was 18 years old, and I was effectively homeless. Well, technically I had a roof over my head for a few weeks, but after my parents made it clear I was no longer welcome in the main house, I knew I needed to leave. I had exactly $2,847 in a bank account that wasn't connected to the family trust, money I had saved from small acting gigs and tutoring jobs. It was supposed to help with my first semester at Juilliard. Instead, it had to cover rent. Welcome to the real world, James. New York City in the fall is beautiful. It's also brutally expensive and completely unforgiving if you're broke. I found a studio apartment in Washington Heights, the cheapest neighborhood I could find that was still in the city. It was 400 square feet of absolute poverty. The walls were thin. The heating didn't work properly. There were cockroaches. But it was mine, and nobody could take it away from me. Juilliard was simultaneously the best and worst decision of my life at that moment. Best because I was finally studying what I loved. Worst because I was exhausted all the time. I was working 3 jobs just to afford rent and food. I worked nights at a restaurant. I worked mornings at a gym. I worked weekends as an extra on film and TV sets just to stay connected to the industry. I was sleeping 4 hours a night. I was living on coffee and ramen and the occasional free meal the restaurant would give me at the end of my shift. I was losing weight. I was losing sleep. But I was alive. My parents, meanwhile, had moved on with their lives. They had essentially erased me. When people asked about me at their charity galas, they said I was studying abroad or traveling. They never mentioned that I had been cut off. That was too embarrassing. For 2 years, I didn't hear from them. 2 years of complete silence. Then, in my junior year at Juilliard, I got a call from my father's personal assistant. My grandfather, my mother's father, had suffered a stroke. The family was gathering at the Harrington estate. My father wanted me to come. It wasn't a genuine invitation. It was more like a summons. Like I was supposed to drop everything and come running because the Harringtons had called. I almost didn't go. But my grandfather was one of the few people in that family who had ever shown me genuine affection. I bought a bus ticket and went home to the one place I swore I would never return to. That visit changed everything. The Harrington estate was exactly as I remembered it, cold, perfect, and soulless. My grandfather was in the master bedroom, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed constantly. He had suffered a massive stroke, and the doctors weren't sure if he would recover. He couldn't speak. He could barely move. But when he saw me, I swear his eyes lit up. That moment, seeing him recognize me despite everything, it broke something open inside me. I stayed at the estate for a week. I didn't stay in the main house. My parents didn't invite me to. Instead, I stayed in a hotel nearby, visiting my grandfather every day. My mother would nod politely when she saw me in the hallway. My father wouldn't even make eye contact. It was during one of these visits that my aunt, my mother's sister, Margaret, pulled me aside. "James, I need to talk to you," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder to make sure nobody was listening. "It's about your grandfather." We went to one of the sitting rooms, away from the main part of the house. My aunt sat down, and for the first time in my life, I saw her actually look tired. Like the weight of the Harrington name was finally crushing her. "Your grandfather is dying," she said bluntly. "The doctors give him a few months, maybe less. And when he dies, his will is going to be read. And when that will is read, everything is going to change." "What do you mean?" I asked. My aunt looked at me carefully. "Your grandfather's estate is worth approximately $800 million. Most of it was supposed to go to your mother, who would then distribute it to the family. But James, he changed his will 6 months ago, before the stroke." She paused, letting that sink in. "He left the majority of the estate to you." I literally felt the room spin. "What? Why would he do that?" "Because," my aunt said quietly, "he knew what your parents did to you. He didn't agree with it. In fact, he told your mother it was the worst decision she could have ever made. He said that cutting you off would be the greatest gift, because it would force you to become a real person instead of just another shallow Harrington." My hands were shaking. $800 million? Close to it, yes. Your grandfather was incredibly proud of you, James. He followed your career at Juilliard. He came to see one of your performances. You didn't know he was there, but he was. He wept. He actually wept. He told me you were the only one in this family with real talent, with real passion, with a real soul. Tears were streaming down my face now. I couldn't help it. "But here's the thing," my aunt continued, her voice becoming more serious. "Your parents don't know about this yet. And when they find out, they're going to do everything in their power to stop it. They're going to hire lawyers. They're going to claim that your grandfather wasn't of sound mind when he changed his will. They're going to make your life hell." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I love you," she said simply. "And because I'm tired of watching this family destroy people in the name of money and legacy. Your grandfather understood something that your parents never will, that real wealth isn't money. Real wealth is freedom. Real wealth is the ability to live your own life, on your own terms." She stood up and handed me an envelope. "This is contact information for your grandfather's personal lawyer. Go see him tomorrow. He's been waiting to talk to you. Get your ducks in a row before your parents realize what's happening." 3 days later, my grandfather died. And 2 weeks after that, the will was read. When my parents found out that I had inherited the majority of the Harrington fortune, they were destroyed. Not sad. Destroyed. All their manipulation, all their ultimatums, all their cruelty, it had accomplished nothing. In fact, it had accomplished the exact opposite of what they intended. They had cut me off to control me. Instead, they had freed me. And now, I had the resources to live my own life completely and totally independently. That's when they made their final decision. The one that confirmed everything I had ever suspected about them. My parents' lawyer called me 3 days after the will was read. "Your parents would like to meet with you," she said formally. "They've asked if you would be willing to have a discussion about the inheritance and the future of the family businesses." I almost laughed. For 4 years, they had treated me like I was dead to them. And now, the moment I had money, suddenly I was worth talking to. "Tell them I'll meet with them," I said. "Tomorrow. At a restaurant. Neutral ground." I chose a quiet Italian place in the city, Not their usual scene. Not some exclusive country club where they could control the narrative. I arrived early and sat in the back booth, watching them walk in. They looked older than I remembered. My father's hair had more gray in it. My mother looked gaunt, like the stress of the last few years had hollowed her out from the inside. They sat down across from me, and for a moment, nobody said anything. "James," my mother finally said, her voice carefully controlled, "we owe you an apology." I almost choked on my water. "We were wrong," my father continued. "About Juilliard. About how we handled the situation. We were short-sighted. We were afraid that you were throwing your life away. But we can see now that we were mistaken." He leaned forward slightly, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. This was a business transaction to him. This was a negotiation. "The family has faced some financial difficulties in recent years," he said. "The real estate market has been unstable. And frankly, we need capital to keep the business afloat. We would like to propose that you become a junior partner in Montgomery Properties. We would restructure the company, and you would have a significant stake in future earnings. In other words, give us money so we can save our failing business. And in exchange," my mother added quickly, "we would like to reinstate you in the family. You would be welcomed back. We could put the past behind us. We could be a family again." I looked at them both, really looked at them, and something inside me crystallized. They didn't love me. They never had. What they loved was the possibility of controlling me, and now that I had money, they wanted to control that too. "No," I said simply. My father's face went red. "Excuse me." "No," I repeated. "I'm not going to be a junior partner. I'm not going to give you money to save your business. And I'm not going to pretend that we can just erase the last 4 years and become a happy family." My mother's eyes widened. "James, you don't understand what you're saying. Without the family business, I'll be fine," I interrupted. "I'm going to be better than fine. Because I'm going to use this money to do what I've always wanted to do. I'm going to produce films. I'm going to tell stories. I'm going to create art that matters." I stood up, signaling that this meeting was over. "My grandfather understood what you never will," I continued. "He understood that the real gift isn't money or power or a family name. The real gift is freedom. And that's exactly what he gave me. You tried to control me my entire life. You tried to make me into something I'm not. And when I refused, you cut me off. You abandoned me." My father started to say something, but I held up my hand. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. "I'm actually grateful. Because losing you forced me to find myself. And I turned out pretty great." I looked at my mother. "You made your final decision a long time ago. You chose the money over me. Well, now you're losing both. Because I'm using the money to build a life that has nothing to do with you." I threw some cash on the table for my water and stood to leave. "Goodbye," I said. "I hope the family business works out for you. But I won't be helping you save it." I walked out of that restaurant and I never looked back. That was 5 years ago. Today, I'm 33 years old, and my life is almost unrecognizable from the person I used to be. After that final meeting with my parents, I threw myself completely into building something meaningful. I used my inheritance to start a production company called Free Stories, because that's what I wanted to create, stories that were free from the constraints of commercialism, free from the expectations of legacy, free from the need to impress anyone. My first film was a documentary about young people from wealthy families who had rejected their families' expectations to pursue their own dreams. It premiered at Sundance and won the Audience Award. It was a love letter to everyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough, that their dreams were unrealistic, that they should just accept the life that had been planned for them. People called it suspiciously autobiographical. My second project was a feature film about a man who chose art over money, and the family drama that ensued. It was nominated for 3 Golden Globes. The lead actor won for Best Actor in a Drama. In his acceptance speech, he talked about how the script had changed his life because it had given voice to something he had always felt but never had words for. I watched that speech from the audience, and I cried like I hadn't cried since I was 18 years old, sitting in that bus station with everything I owned in a single suitcase. My third project was a limited series about inheritance, family trauma, and the way money can destroy relationships. It won an Emmy. I wasn't there to accept it. I was in Romania filming my next project. But I watched it online from a tiny hotel room, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Somewhere along the way, I became successful. Not in the way my parents had defined success. Not with money and power and a family name that opens doors. But in a real way. In a way that mattered. My work was helping people. My stories were healing people. I had become someone I actually respected. And then, about a year ago, something happened that I never expected. My mother contacted me. Not through a lawyer. Not through a formal letter. She called my office and asked if she could see me. She said it was important. She said she was sick. I almost didn't take the meeting. But something made me. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just the smallest remaining piece of me that still hoped, against all odds, that things could be different. We met at a coffee shop, not a restaurant this time. More neutral. More humble. My mother looked frail. Like the elegant, put-together woman I remembered had been replaced by someone vulnerable, someone real. She was 71 years old, and she looked exhausted by life. "I'm dying," she said without preamble. "Ovarian cancer. The doctors give me about 6 months." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. "I watched your last series," she continued. "All 8 episodes. I watched it while I was undergoing chemotherapy. And I saw myself. I saw my own mother in your portrayal of the cold, controlling parent. And James, I finally understood what I had done to you." She started to cry then, real tears, not performative tears like before. "I was so afraid," she said. "I was so afraid that you would be nobody, that you would fail, that you would embarrass the family. But what I was really afraid of was that you would be happy without me, that you would find meaning without our approval. And instead of supporting you, I punished you for it." I listened to her, and something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. "Your grandfather tried to tell me," she continued. "He kept saying that the only thing we were accomplishing by cutting you off was proving to you that our love was conditional. That we loved the idea of you, but not you. And he was right." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her hand was thin, fragile. She looked so small. "I know I don't have the right to ask this," she said quietly, "but I'm asking anyway. I would like for you to forgive me. Not for my sake, but for yours. Because I've watched what holding on to anger did to your father. It destroyed him. After you left, he threw himself into work even more intensely than before. He lost himself completely, and he regretted it every single day until his death last year. My father had died. I hadn't even known. Nobody had told me. He wanted to contact you," my mother said, "near the end. But he was too proud. He thought you hated him, and he couldn't bear to hear it." I sat with that information for a long moment. My father had died without us ever reconciling, without me even knowing he was sick. "I can't undo the past," my mother said. "But I can be different now. If you'll let me." I looked at this woman, this frail, dying woman who had once represented everything I rejected about my childhood, and I made a decision. "Tell me about him," I said. Tell me about my father. Tell me about who he was before he became Charles Montgomery, real estate mogul. Tell me the truth." And so she did. We sat in that coffee shop for 6 hours. My mother told me stories about my father that I had never heard. Stories about how he had come from nothing. About how he had been afraid his entire life. Afraid of going back to poverty, afraid of losing control, afraid of being abandoned. About how he had built an empire not out of ambition but out of terror. She told me about their marriage, how it had been built on a business partnership rather than love. How they had both been so afraid of being vulnerable that they had turned their entire family into a transaction. For the first time, I understood that my parents hadn't hurt me out of cruelty. They had hurt me out of their own damage. They had hurt me because they were broken and didn't know how to fix themselves. That understanding didn't erase the pain, but it transformed it into something else. Compassion. My mother died 4 months later. I was with her when it happened. I held her hand as she left this world. And in her last moments, she looked at me and smiled, really smiled, like she was finally seeing me for who I actually was. "You turned out beautiful," she whispered. And then she was gone. My name is James Whitmore, and this is my story. For a long time, I thought that my parents' rejection was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I thought being cut off was a tragedy. I thought losing everything was the end of my life. But it was actually the beginning. When you have nothing, you discover who you really are. When you have no one to impress, you finally find the freedom to be yourself. When you lose everything, you realize what actually matters. My parents chose money over me. And in doing so, they accidentally gave me the greatest gift. They freed me. I built a life that is entirely my own. I created art that has meaning. I tell stories that change people's lives. I am financially successful not because I was handed it, but because I earned it. And that makes it matter so much more. To anyone watching this who has been rejected by their family, who has been told they're not good enough, who has been controlled or manipulated or abandoned, I want you to know something. That rejection is not the end. It's a beginning. The people who love you will support your dreams. The people who try to control you are afraid. And the only person whose approval you actually need is yourself. My parents made their final decision a long time ago. They chose the legacy over the person, the dynasty over their own son. But I made my decision too. I chose myself. And that choice changed everything. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt abandoned or misunderstood by the people you loved, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me your story. And if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. More stories are coming. Stories about family, about redemption, about choosing yourself. Thank you for listening to my truth. I hope it inspired you to live yours.